Hello and welcome to the World Wanderers podcast, your source for travel stories, travel destinations, and travel philosophy.
I'm Amanda.
I'm Ryan.
And we're your hosts.
All right, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the podcast. Today, we are excited to be on location. We're sitting on a beautiful balcony in Ajijic, Mexico, just off the shore of Lake Chapala, which is just a little bit outside of Guadalajara, and we're actually visiting and catching up with some good friends here. We've got Jake and Michelle from the Retired Toddlers, who, if you're paying attention and listening intently to all the episodes, you would have heard way back in 2017. So, Jake and Michelle, thank you for coming back on.
Yeah, thanks for having us. We're excited.
Yeah, good to be coming back for a second time around.
Yeah, we were brainstorming like, what should we talk about? And I was like, well, we should probably start by catching up where you've been since we talked last. And we figured out that it's been like almost 3 years since we had you on the podcast.
It's crazy because we really had no idea that we would be traveling this long.
Yeah, our trip kind of just keeps getting extended and extended through various circumstances, but we're still going.
Yeah, so where all have you guys been? I guess kind of for the podcast terms, I think the last time we talked to you, we were in Bali, and I honestly don't remember. I think you guys were in Cambodia at that time. Mm-hmm. I think Amanda just said that, actually. But where all have you been since then?
So, yeah, we spent some time in Southeast Asia, and then we went over to Europe and kind of did a European tour, came back to the States for a little bit, spent a fall in the Caribbean. Then we came here to Mexico, right?
Yep. We did like Egypt, some more Europe, Morocco. I can't even remember.
We spent a month in Tuscany.
Yeah, we've been taking it almost like 3 months at a time, I think, and then it just kind of keeps extending, and now we're back here in Mexico.
Yeah, and that's been kind of your consistent place for the last couple of years, which is pretty cool. And that's the last time we saw you guys was actually while we were living in Mexico City. You guys were living here.
Right.
So I'm curious, like, why did you guys choose Ajijic as a place to base yourselves the last 3 winters?
Yeah, so my mom retired here about 15 years ago, so she spends half the year here. And we initially came down to visit her. We were staying across town. We found a great school to put the kids in temporarily. And that school has really drawn us back. So that's one of the reasons we keep coming back here.
Yeah, and the first year, I guess the first year, was that last year?
No, year before.
The year before?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So the year before, we came down for 6 weeks. And we were like, we'll try this out. We'll just like put the kids in school for 6 weeks, like a language immersion type of thing, see how it goes. We found a school that would allow that. And that answered all of our questions, the 1,005 questions that I had about putting my kids in school there. And Jagger was like more it was almost like the daycare part of the school, and Henley was in the preschool. And they both really took to it so well that the next year we were like, well, let's come back for a few more months and extend it. And so that's what we did earlier this year. We came back for 4 months earlier this year. Henley was in kindergarten and Jagger in preschool. And we loved it so much that we were like, well, let's come back in the fall and let Henley start first grade here. And it also makes it easy that we can travel out from here with a little less pressure than how we feel it might be if we enroll our kids in school in the U.S.
Yeah, I think it's so cool, and something that's been really fun about just hanging around with you guys and with the kids is seeing how much Spanish they're learning and how they're learning it. Henley is always giving out corrections on Spanish pronunciation. So it is really cool, and I feel like you get to learn like just how quickly kids can learn a language like that.
Yeah, and the kids are in a school that is a Spanish-speaking school, so it's a local Mexican school, private school, and I think that their peer-to-peer interactions are just priceless because they're really gaining a lot from those, schoolmate to schoolmate interactions, and they can pick up a lot of little things here and there.
Yeah, and I can't remember if we talked about this on a previous episode, but kind of leading into that decision of like they're about to be school age, what was your thinking at the time? Were you guys like debating a lot between like, should we go back to the States? Should we homeschool them? And then like, how did you eventually decide that you wanted to just kind of do a little bit of schooling here?
Yeah, I mean, again, we kind of take this 3 months at a time. I feel like it's my time frame in my head is always like 3 to 6 months. And we talked a lot about it, actually. We talked, and every time in our head, we were like, well, when Henley gets to kindergarten age, we'll stop traveling, we'll settle down, we'll put her in kindergarten. And then we were like, well, that's still young. Okay, when she gets to first grade, we'll definitely go back to the States. And then, homeschooling is always an option. To be quite honest, I don't know if I have the patience for it. I don't know if I'd be very good at it. So we've taken an approach to schooling in general as like more of a world, thank you, world schooling approach of like when we're learning about something or when we're seeing something in real life, we talk about it. But here, because we love the school and because the kids, this kind of experiment that we did where we put them in for 6 weeks and they really loved it and we really loved how the school operated. And we just kind of kept coming back and we're taking it just a few months at a time, honestly. There's no like long-term decision here. But I think that's kind of how we fell into it, right?
Yeah, and it's a hard thing to explain, but when your kids go to school in the morning, excited about going to school, and they come home at the end of the day, super happy and excited about how their day went, it's a tough thing to take that away from them. So we feel like as long as they're really enjoying that experience, they're making the decision for us.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a really important part of education, like kind of considering like who your kids are, what's going to be best for them, and what they're enjoying, because there probably are children that would maybe struggle with this type of environment and the schooling here. But I mean, Henley and Jagger are clearly thriving and clearly love it. We got to go to their like ballet performance, which is not part of the school, but just to see them interact with all their little friends that like don't speak English at all is so cool.
It is. I
think you're just kind of, I don't know. I think especially for me, like my life was not like that growing up. So it's just, I think about like, oh, is that the right experience for a child? And I think that it's just a cool reminder that children are so, like, they're little sponges and they're so willing to learn. And
they're adaptable.
Yeah.
That's what we've really found. I mean, I wholeheartedly believe in education, right? I mean, when you travel, you realize how important education is to a population, to a community, to a culture. But Jake and I both, I would say, agree that if our kids were not thriving in a school, we do not hesitate to school them a different way. We don't push education in the sense of a traditional school system onto our kids, nor do we think that's the only route to take. And so we've been very open-minded about that. I think we will be the same when it comes to university. We've already talked about that, that if our kids want to go, fine. If they don't, we're not going to push that onto them. But the thing is we laugh because we're like, here we are saying like, we just want our kids to be like, ordinary, nothing spectacular, like just want to learn about things, but they don't have to like be traditional, like educated traditionally. And our kids really love school. They really love the school system. Henley already talks about going to the university, and Jagger wants to be like the best soccer player ever. And and we're like, of course, we get the kids to like that.
It's kind of funny. It reminds me, there's a podcast I listen to with James Altucher sometimes, and he's like very much like anti-college, hates college, argues about how college is awful on his podcast all the time. And then his daughter got to that age and really wanted to go to college, and he'd like argue with her about it not doing it. But then she's like dead set on going to college and went to college.
Yeah. Isn't that the truth? That's what we like joke about too, is like our kids are going to have lots of pets and be homebodies.
You just never know.
Yeah.
So it's cool that you guys are being super adaptable though, and that able to give them this really awesome experience.
Yeah.
And so I'm guessing there's like quite a few people who are listening who are interested in that idea of like putting their kids in a Mexican school or maybe a school in French, Canada or France in French. I know you guys had the connection here because of your mom, Jake, but what was like the process like of kind of vetting a school from a distance?
Yeah, I guess I'll take that a little bit because I had the million questions. But, honestly, what it came down to is first we looked here because we were like, well, great, we'll be kind of close to Jake's mom, who is in and out. So she's not even around all that much. But and she just lives 15 minutes down the road. And so I looked for schools around here, and really I couldn't find that much information. Like we've been joking about this whole weekend is like, you have to like be there and start searching and asking all the locals and asking people before you actually find where that like Pilates studio is that you're trying to find that's just 5 minutes down the road, but you had no idea existed.
Yeah.
And it's
there's no schedules online. There's no information. There's no prices.
There's no website. Yeah. And so, but that's kind of how it was with the school. You know, there was actually a school 1 block from here on this road that I had no idea was there. And I had looked on maps and everything and like trying to figure out the area. And so this school, for one, was listed and got back to me and answered all my questions. And I just felt very comfortable at the point, you know, after they were answering all my questions. I think the other thing is with, at least for Americans, we can spend 6 months here. And, you know, in Europe, we can only spend 90 days. And so we'd have to, and not that we end up spending that much time in one place typically, but so that's another deciding factor as far as putting kids in schools. Like, how can you be in a place that long?
Yeah, and I think because it's a private school, perhaps they had more information available online versus the public schools here, which we would not have been against, but remotely it was very hard to find information out about those public schools and how you enroll your child and what that process is. Whereas this private school was much more able to communicate around what that might look like. I think they may have had experience with visiting students before, so it made it an easier process for us.
And do you think it makes more sense for people to, like, if someone didn't have, you know, much in the way of a personal connection, to just start with places like the parents enjoy, and then start looking for schools from there? How would you suggest someone like goes about the process if they were just curious about it?
Definitely has to be a place where your family can find happiness. You know, it's not just about the kids, it has to be about you also. So we also wanted to make sure it was a place where we could be socially involved with other, you know, the part of the community, and make sure that we had those positive experiences. For Michelle, for example, that's very focused on healthy food and organic and healthy options for the markets, things like that. So making sure that our family had not only the school, but other aspects of our family life to be covered.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. It's like anywhere that you're going to be.
There's the laundry cart, I think, going by.
Mexico.
Yeah.
I think that's something that we consider as well. Like places, there's a total difference between like, oh, hey, I'm going here for a weekend or I'm spending a week versus like, hey, I'm spending like 5 months, like where, you know, we have to kind of make a life. And I think that it is important to look at like what you value and make sure that that place offers that, because, you know, of course your children matter, their education matter, but like you guys are important too. Your day-to-day happiness is also important.
Yeah, I think like the overall picture is important for health and in any way that you look at it. And that's part of it. And also I think with the mindset of, you know what, if it's not working for us, then we'll just go somewhere else. You know, we don't have to be here forever, and we don't plan on being here forever. That's why we're just kind of taking it, at least in my mind, that 3 to 6 month time frame at a time.
What are you doing 7 months from now?
Where will you be? How will we visit you?
You'll find out next month.
It'll be in our newsletter. No, that's awesome. And so I'm curious, like, what it's actually been like this has been the third, I guess, year that you guys have been down here doing this. Like, what has it been like to actually like see your kids be in this school over time?
Well, first of all, I think the school and the community have been so welcoming and inviting that's really made us feel included in the community. I mean, the kids get invited to every birthday party, all the school events. They're very open about making sure we're going to show up to. It's a very involved school for the parents. So all of those activities have really helped us to feel comfortable with the school setting, and for the kids to find friends and classmates that they can really be really cordial with and get along with.
Yeah, and I don't think it's, you know, I don't think it's always easy. And I realize that with the kids, you know, I think that they are very adaptable. They're socially very adaptable to situations. They like to be around other people. They like to learn new things. They are like sponges. But I also realize that we are putting them in these situations that are not easy, right? I mean, they're in a foreign country where they don't speak a language. We're asking them to make friends and learn. And so I try to recognize that also, that sometimes, you know, that it's the same with us too, though, right? I mean, like it's not always easy, first of all, as adults to make friends, right? Mm-hmm. And then you don't speak the same language, you don't understand like the same cultural backgrounds of how things work and operate and why people do things a certain way. So we kind of have been throwing ourselves in there because we expect our kids to do that. I have made it a point to try to do that more myself around here, to understand how they feel. And it's hard. It's exhausting. Like when I am spending an hour a day trying to speak in Spanish, I'm exhausted. So like I started to realize my kids need more sleep and rest, and I have to be like patient with them when they're a little bit more cranky, because it's hard. It's not always easy, but they make it fun and easy and enjoyable, and they come home and teach us new words in Spanish, or they correct us on our pronunciation all that time. And it's a fun family experience. I mean, like we even sometimes will have nights where we just try to talk in Spanish, and it's not like fluid, perfect, whatever, but it's fun because we're all trying to learn and we're learning from each other. And I mean, Jake is quite great at Spanish, but even the kids start correcting you from time to time, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah, and I think, so overall, the community, the people have been super inviting and welcoming. And so speaking in Spanish to the other parents, I think it's a great challenge for us, and it's really a challenge to get to know people socially and to get over those language barriers. I do think that that's a barrier in some ways to building friendships. So it's, in some ways it feels like you can only take the friendship so far when that language barrier is in place.
Yeah.
So I do think that's a hurdle that we haven't quite conquered yet.
Yeah, and sometimes, so if you think about it, like I always have heard that when you move to a new town and you're trying to get involved, that it takes about 3 years, right? So I would expect that this is no different, and that it would probably take a lot longer if we were to stay. When we kind of decided that we're going to spend most of the year here to school the kids, we started getting a little bit more involved in the community and a little bit more involved, and realized that it's easy in so many ways because they're all very welcoming, but it is hard to like make those really true friendships, those ones that you sit down and laugh with and just like be silly with, because that's just that's hard.
Yeah. We've talked about that too, like especially when you don't speak the language fluently. Like I think there's just things that you kind of, it's like, oh, okay, like
Lost in translation.
Yeah, like I don't get why that's funny. Everyone's laughing and you're like, haha, I don't really understand that. And then you're totally kind of out of it.
Yeah.
Like we've said too, like our Spanish is like at a level where we can do pretty much anything we need in Spanish, but in terms of making friends that are locals, that's something that has been challenging for us too. And I feel like, yeah, like navigating like the, I guess, social norms of like parenting or like school stuff. Like you're in a bunch of mommy chats on WhatsApp that are messaging constantly. So we were reading through, practicing translations.
I asked Amanda, can you take over my role? Because this takes me hours and hours every week to try to figure these out.
Yeah, because things are different. Like, you're talking about Dia de los Muertos stuff, and it's like we don't celebrate that. Like you would probably know how to do Halloween stuff and what we do in North America with that, but here it's different. So yeah, there's lots of stuff to navigate.
And so you guys have still been traveling quite a bit. What's it been like for the kids leaving Ahihi? Is it something where they're like excited about the next adventure? Are they more like sad about leaving behind friends at school? What's that been like?
I think one thing we've done well with the kids is we do the same things every year throughout the year. So we always spend Christmas with Michelle's family in Cincinnati. We always spend time, a short amount of time in Tampa with some of their friends where they were born. We spend summer in Rhode Island with my friends and with some of their now friends. And so we do some of those things throughout the year to create consistent traditions. And so they're able to look forward to those things where they know they have people they can reconnect with in each of those places. So those things are really well. In between those locations is where we have mixed it up.
Yeah, and I think, they seem to be, they're very excited for the next thing, So they get very excited with us, and I think we get very excited about like a new adventure or the next thing. And so they do too. But I will say that, when we're in Rhode Island, they talk about missing their friends from school in Mexico, right? But then when we're here, they talk about missing their friends and family in Rhode Island. And so now that we have had all these different places where we have these groups of friends and friendships and connections, I've realized that we're never going to have just one spot where this is our only community and this is how they're going to grow up, which is basically how I grew up and how you grew up, right? This was our community that we knew and we grew up with. And I think there's a lot of value to that. And I've always kind of been like, that's what the reason that we'll go back and settle down is because we want that for our kids. But at the end of the day, I'm also realizing that it's okay that they have different sets of communities and there's value to that too. And if we can keep some of that consistent, I think we'll be able to continue to travel between those periods as long as we can give them some sense of community at those times and those places.
Yeah, that's really sort of similar to what we've done as well. And I feel like it does make you kind of look forward to the times that you do get to spend with certain communities. I think it makes it harder in some ways because then you have friends all over the place. But I think that's also like such a blessing, right? Like it's so cool to have friends that are not just in your hometown, because we grew up, the same as you guys too, where all my friends from age 0 to 18 are from the same place as me. Then my friends from like 18 onwards, they start to spread out a little bit wider and wider and wider as I've gotten older. But
it just expands in my opinion, expands your horizons. I don't know, it just like expands your reach of your cultural reach and understanding of other people. And I think when it comes down to the reason that we traveled, I mean, there are lots of reasons, but one of them is so that our kids have a better understanding of how to communicate with other cultures and other people. And so I think in that sense, it ignites our willingness to keep traveling.
Yeah, and I think sometimes we may have to be more encouraging of them to make connections when we get to those places, to make sure that they're reconnecting with people that they've already met and they already know. And that's okay. I mean, as a parent, that's part of our job to help them along the way to build those long-term connections.
Yeah, for sure. I really like that about what you guys have done. I'm curious, what has been the most challenging thing about trying to do school in Mexico, or not trying, doing school in Mexico, having kids in school in Mexico?
I mean, I think in a lot of ways it's no different than parents putting their kids in school at their home country. I think that those transitions from summertime to school time and getting into those routines are always a challenge to make sure everyone's on the same page with what their daily life will be like throughout the day and throughout the week. So that is a universal challenge, whether we're here or anywhere else.
And I'd say also, along those same lines, you're always worried about, are my kids making friends? Are they happy at school? Are they being bullied? Are they bullying anybody? Are they being the kind people that we're trying to create into this world? Are they accepting of others? Are others accepting of them? All those same things, we talk about a lot, but we would talk about that no matter where they were in school or a program or whatever. I think you just want what's best for your kids and the people that are surrounding them. And the same. I think a lot of the same stuff, really. Yeah,
the things that I would say are specific to going to school in another country are, number one, safety, security. That was pinnacle when we first put them in school here, and so we had to make sure that we were comfortable with being away from them in the school setting all day. And the school was able to communicate that to us, and we were able to get that sense of security from them by just visiting it and understanding what a great place it is.
And I would say I would have the same or more of that safety concern with any school in the U.S., especially at this time. But I would say the biggest issue with going to a school out of country is the barrier of language and culture. That no matter how hard you try is there. And so are you completely understanding what is expected, what is needed, are we on the same page safety-wise or not? We're not really sure, what programs are in place. You ask some questions, but a lot is lost in translation, right?
Yeah, even it was funny earlier today, we were talking about a Dia de los Muertos event at school. And it's the type of thing you could imagine in the States if you had come from a different country and were oh, it's Halloween, your kids should dress up and come to school. And if you translate that, that means something very different than put on a costume and come to school ready to eat candy and have candy ready. There's so many uncommunicated instructions that need to go into that.
Right. And exactly. And on the WhatsApp chat, somebody said, reminder, don't dress your kids like like they're going to Halloween, you
Yeah.
know?
I read it like 3 times before I was like, oh, is this actually like no Halloween costumes? Like, what are we doing? It's
Right.
November 1st.
Right. They didn't actually say that in English. So you had to like pick it apart and realize, okay,
Yeah.
yes, those types of things where you're like, sometimes, you know, the kids and I have gotten into like a very funny thing where we're just like, Mommy and Daddy are trying our best, and we're going to not understand fully what's going on half the time, but we are trying our best, and we think we're showing up on time, or we think we're doing this right, or we think the birthday party is supposed to operate like this, but we're not really sure what we're walking into. But we just kind of go with it. And I think something about traveling makes you just kind of go with it and not have such these expectations. You let go of a lot. Like I was always a pretty like organized person. Like this starts at 9, this is what to expect, and this is how it's done. But I think when I'm traveling, I let go of a lot of that expectation. I mean, you have to if you're going to enjoy
you'll go
it.
crazy otherwise. I'm
So
very
the
much.
same with the schools.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
I had a pretty funny experience with Henley. She needed a flauta for a music class at school. So I'm picturing a flute, like a sideways flute that she has to find and bring to school because apparently all her friends at school had one for music class.
For a month into school, and finally she's like, do you know that I need some kind of flauta? And I was like, what? She's like, well, music class, for every Wednesday's music class, and everybody does the flauta. And I was like, what do you do? She's like, I just sit and read a book. I was like, what? And nobody told me we needed this. This is the kind of stuff that happens all the time to us, though.
Yeah. So we went all over town looking for a flute, and nobody sells musical instruments in this little pueblo. And finally, we go to the
And
store.
we went to Walmart.
Yeah, we went to the store.
like everywhere.
And we're in the stationery aisle, and they have recorders there, musical recorders. And Henley says, oh, here it is. And so it was the exact opposite of what I was picturing. She just needed a recorder.
And they sell them at the like little papeleria that's like a tienda with that sells pencils and paper and flautas apparently.
So little things like that, the translation, sometimes your kids can really help you walk through those translations
Yeah.
too.
And so you guys are like not only traveling a lot, parenting, having your kids in school, but also balancing that with work. And I know Amanda and I struggle with balancing work and travel on its own.
And taking care of just ourselves.
Yeah, we were actually joking earlier that we live like very similar lives, but instead of parenting, we're just doing guacamole and Netflix. But other than that, our time allocations are similar.
Henley's guacamole, Jagger's Netflix.
But how do you find and kind of like create that balance to like, you know, create time for yourself to be productive and work in a remote setting while also having all this other responsibility and stuff going on?
I think between the two of us, we've had to make that work in our relationship. First of all, that we have, zones that we are both on board with. When one of us is working, the other one's taking care of things around the house, whatever it might be. So that's really important to get on the same page as a couple. That was definitely rule number one: setting our expectations, making sure that we're both clear.
And we
on
still
that.
work at that.
Yeah.
I would say, right? That's like a constant work in progress. It's balance, work-life balance, travel-life balance, everything balance in life. I think is a constant work in progress.
Yeah, and for us, I think, so I actually went back to working full time when the kids went back to school because all of a sudden they're gone all day, and so it opened up an opportunity for me to go back to work full time. So I think that was a transition that made sense for us at the time, and in addition with all the other balancing of the social, the school, everything down here, that's just something that's part of our routine.
Yeah, and I mean, when Jake says full-time, he's full-time contractor. So he does have flexibility. It's not like he's working for somebody, like going into an office every day. And I think both of us are very entrepreneurial in the sense that we like to have we have our own business. And with having your own business, you have a responsibility to be intentional about making that business work if you're going to continue to live the lifestyle that we live. And so with that in mind, I think we make it work. Now, does it always run smoothly? No. Do we, I'll use the term fail, but like I don't use it in a negative sense. Like, do we try things and they don't work? Maybe some people call it failure. Yes, all the time, right? Like, how many things have we tried that just don't work?
Dozens.
But we just keep going and we just keep figuring it out. And it's not always easy, but it's so worth it because we have this lifestyle of a lot more freedom. But with that is not the scheduled, rigid lifestyle, and so you do have to be intentional. When we're traveling, the kids nap, and I've been very intentional about like putting in an hour or two, and that doesn't sound like a big work day, but like when you're traveling all day and you're exhausted and that's the last thing you want to do, I still try to make that work every single day to put in some time in my work or when they go to sleep at night. And obviously now that they're in school for these months, it makes it obviously open up a lot more time. But
yeah, and we've both found professions, careers, whatever you might want to describe it, that are very rewarding to us individually. So I think that's also an important part of our life. Not just being parents and trying to, make our kids succeed, but also getting rewarded with our work that we do also.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really important, like, to make sure that you're still your own individual person while having children.
Yes.
I think that, we obviously don't have children, but it's something that I think is really important. Like, obviously you're going to be like mom and dad to those little humans and you need to take care of them, but you're also still like Jake and Michelle.
Right. And that's a really, really hard thing to do. I mean, like, at least I'll speak for like mommies, that I feel like that is a very hard balance. It's like you want to be there for your kids, you want to be there for the moments. And then if you are trying to do like build some kind of thing on the side or trying to work full time or whatever you're trying to do, there's always this sense of not good enough. And I really wish that as women, as mommies, that we would kind of let that go and get over that a little bit and say that it's okay that I take these hours and I say, like, I am working. Even if my kids have to be, doing like a art activity without me or doing something without me on the side. I don't have to be present in every single moment. But then when I am present, I've really tried to work hard at being present with them. And I think if you can kind of strike that balance, that it is okay to have your own thing and to sometimes take that some time away from the kids. But then when you are with them, to be present, I think that it's a hard thing to do. It's something that I constantly try to work at. But I try to let it go that it is okay that mommy is working and doing some things because it's important to me. And it helps our family. And it also helps my kids see that like we can both work and constantly that's an important part of our life as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's important for your kids to see you guys fulfilled in what you do so that they understand that you can have careers that are rewarding. And I think it's cool that you guys have found that balance of being able to travel and work and do it with your kids, because I think that, there's so many valuable things they're learning from this experience that, I was telling you guys, the first time I went to Mexico, I was 12. I think I turned 12 on that trip. And that was the first time I'd seen like people live in like, I don't know, like Mexican houses. Like, I'm from Canada.
Different.
We need like some thorough shelter because it gets really cold. Like, I'm like, whoa, there's like a tarp that's like a door there. And the first time that I like experienced people having accents in real life.
Yeah.
And I don't know, to me, that's such like, you're so developed at that point that it's so nice to see like these kids they don't blink at accents, right?
No, and they don't, the funniest thing that's happened in the school a little bit is that some of the kids have more called out Henley and Jagger for looking different, which it's just like an interesting experience, right? Like they'll just say, oh, well, that they have white skin and blonde hair and they look so much different than all the other kids at the school. And I kind of like that they see how that feels. And we talk about it sometimes, like, how does that make you feel? Now remember that, because if you're ever in a situation and somebody else is feeling that way, you need to make sure that you're accepting them and bringing them in. And so we talk a lot about that.
Yeah, we don't want to put them in a situation that's traumatizing to them, but I think, toughening them up a little bit through these experiences and making them understand that...
Toughening them up a little bit.
Thickening their skin, maybe. What expression you want to use. But I think that having that experience, like you said, it's an important... it's one of the main reasons we travel, to understand that, we're not all the same as where we're from. There are people all over the world, and to feel like you're the minority in the room is an important lesson to make sure that when you're in other situations, like you mentioned, that you're including other people that might be different than you, that you're accepting of other people, their languages, religions, cultures, and having that experience early on, I just hope really sets them off for life for having that balance.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that I'm curious about, like the last time we had you guys on the show, Jagger was still in diapers, which seems kind of weird now because he's like fully little, like he's like a little man. I'm curious like how travel has changed for you guys as your toddlers have become like older toddlers moving into like little humans.
Yeah. Well, we don't have to carry diapers anymore, which was a big thing. And we stopped carrying a stroller pretty early on. We started teaching our kids to walk and walk longer and longer because we just realized that that's just kind of a lot of places that we go. You can't even really put a stroller on the streets.
It'd be terribly hard here.
You just couldn't. So we stopped bringing that. So, and we just, what else have we kind of...
I'd say so many things are the same. That's why we continue to enjoy it, because we're still seeing the world through their eyes. I think from the start, when we started traveling internationally, we realized how much they break down barriers for us rather than us being so guarded. Yeah. We're having all of these closer experiences with the places we visit because kids just kind of make a connection with other people everywhere we go.
Yeah, no, that's so true. We were kind of talking about that the other day of how they just sometimes having kids there makes things easier, honestly. It makes it more fun and exciting. Like the little moments are just more exciting, and they see things and absorb things in different ways that you wouldn't have. They give you an excuse to go do like fun kid type of things as well. But yeah, I would say as far as like the difference from then to now, you know how parents that are listening will probably connect to this, is like, you don't realize the changes that are happening because you're so in the moment that it's almost funny to look back and think that Jagger was in diapers because it wasn't that long ago. But to us, it's almost like nothing has changed. We just kind of keep trekking along and figuring it out. And I think the kids are a little bit more adaptable as far as like when they can take naps and sleep. I mean, we've always kind of managed that and fit that in, but as they get older, it's just a little bit easier, right? What foods they eat and everything. They've always been really good eaters because we just have kind of raised them like that. But it gets even easier and easier to like kind of figure all that out. They don't have to be fed quite as often, maybe.
At the same time, I would say that it has always been easy.
Yeah, I know.
Even when they were that age, there were challenges, but it always felt easy to us, and that's why we kept going through those stages.
Yeah.
Diapers were just a thing that we got through, and carrying a stroller was. Everything just becomes no big deal when you're enjoying those moments.
Yeah, but let's not mistake that with like, there are still tantrums. There are still moments of complete sleep deprivation. There are still times where we are so exhausted that we snap or they snap. All that stuff still happens, but we've said this before, it will happen if we had a house somewhere with the perfect yard and a dog and, doing the traditional route, or if we're doing this. So we might as well enjoy the views and the travel and keep trucking.
Some nice ripe avocados. Yeah, I was thinking about, as you were talking, Jake, how it must be really cool as they've started talking more. Like Henley's been saying full sentences since we first met her. But
she's an early talker.
But yeah, Jagger was very much like, I'm trying to understand this kid, but I honestly do not speak whatever language he's speaking. And you were like, it's okay.
Language.
You're like, it's okay. Only I understand him. And I was like, okay, good. But it's been really cool. Like as we've seen them in these like over a couple of years grow, like this trip has been really cool because they're so communicative and they like speak their mind and their thoughts. I feel like that must be a cool experience to see, like, not just through their eyes, but then have them like vocalize and ask questions and stuff like that.
Yeah, especially we just took a tour recently, and the kids, their minds are just they're so fresh that they're asking all the best questions, and it makes you realize that sometimes as kids go down the path in school, sometimes that is tamed down for them, toned down, that they start to lose that sense of wonder and that expressive sense of questioning everything. And so I think that hearing Jagger ask questions on this latest tour, which he hadn't really done before on other tours, you just realize that his mind is moving a mile a minute.
And his confidence. I mean, we were on a tour with mostly adults, and we were at a winery, actually, so it's something he knows nothing about. And
doesn't even get to enjoy.
And doesn't even get to enjoy. And he made his little way up to the front, like meandering through people, and he was like trying to ask a question. Well, he's so little that he didn't, like the tour guide did not really see him trying to ask, and he's trying so hard. Then he makes his way back to me and he said, "I have a question." I was like, "Okay, just go ask it, and you can do it, buddy." And I had no idea what he was going to ask. And then he made his way up and he kind of like raised his hand, and then he finally like got it out, and where people like heard him and saw that he was trying to ask something, and he asked like a bunch of questions, and they were all the best questions asked on that tour, and just like leading the tour guide into the next best thing to say, and everybody was just like, this guy's a genius, like, but like not expected out of a 4-year-old's mouth. And I think that's one of the fun things of traveling with kids, right? That's not just our kids. That's like just kids in general are inquisitive if you let them be, if you give them the platform to and the confidence to want to ask questions and to be allowed to, and not to squash that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was cool. We were doing some mezcal tasting last night, and Jagger was like, I have a question, and then asked his question, and I was like, man, that's a really good question.
And just to be clear, no children were drinking mezcal last night.
Yeah.
Or wine.
Or tequila.
I think that's actually what even makes it like more, like even cooler, is because it's like this thing that, like, why on earth should a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old care about wine or mezcal?
Yeah.
Right? Like, the traditional sense would be like, oh, this is an adult activity. Like, you go play in the corner. Like,
Right.
you're not going to care about this. But it's like, I mean, you guys don't treat them like that. It's very much inclusive for them to have that experience. And then they do have questions about it, even though they understand that, like, they can't drink it.
Right. They understand. They always ask if, like, they see a drink, does this have alcohol in it? I can't drink alcohol. You know, not that we drink that much. These just happen to be two random examples. We don't even really drink that much. But yeah, I think they're just interested in life, and that's what makes it fun.
And so you guys gave a quick recap at the start about some of the places you've been. What kind of stands out as highlights for, I guess, you individually and also kind of as a family, anything for the kids over the past bit of travel that's really stood out?
Yeah, I think that we've really attacked our bucket list. Michelle and I had some places we really wanted to go. And so we've been to the great temples of Angkor Wat in Cambodia. We've been to the Great Wall of China, the pyramids in Egypt. We've been to, the London Eye and the Eiffel Tower, and we've been to all these amazing, the Sahara Desert. So, like, when you look at it as a package, we've been to so many incredible places on the planet. However, to me, my best memory is just this togetherness, and the fact that no matter where we go, the activities we're doing, we're always a really tight family unit. And I think that's what really has been our mission throughout all of this, to spend more time together as a family, to enjoy those moments as a family. And that's what I really walk away from all of it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, you recapped so many of my favorites, and just, a lot of times people ask, like, well, how do you deal with sleeping with the kids and stuff? And a lot of times we all sleep in one big bed together, and we are very, very close, right? Like, sometimes we have our own rooms and our own space, but so many of that is so much fun, because when, in travel in general, when you can experience it with other people, there's some big experiences, and it's really hard to relate to other people outside of that travel experience, because you get these feelings, these highs. It's like I'm similar to like a runner's high that you feel after a big travel experience, and it's really hard for other people to relate. And we're so grateful that we at least have our family to chat with, and the kids have a million questions, and we can sit and chat about it and look back and remember this stuff, because otherwise, I've traveled alone a little bit after college, and it's hard to like explain it to other people after these experiences. And I think it bonds you like no other. So that's been really fun.
And I'd just throw in, since I thought you were going to throw this out there, that I think some of Michelle's highlights have also included when we were able to connect with individual families. In some of those places, we did some great cooking classes with just another family, and those kind of one-on-one
local families.
Yeah, those one-on-one interactions with the people and how they live and seeing how they experience life. I really think that's been valuable to the kids also, to see how other people live in their homes.
No, that's true. That's one of the things I really seek out. I seek out experiences. We say we're not budget travelers. We're not luxury travelers. We're like comfort travelers that really seek out some like epic kind of experiences. And to me, a lot of those epic experiences are not necessarily like climbing Mount Everest. It is finding like a non-touristy kind of adventure off the beaten path. That is, we get to go ride donkeys into a village in Egypt, and come across this family's home that is inviting us in to cook with them, and their walls are made of mud and sticks, and nothing on them, and it's probably one of Henley's favorite places, and because they had baby chicks, like little duck chicklings.
Sure.
That's a cool word.
Okay.
And they taught us how to make bread and made us this meal, and I think those are the experiences we really seek out and really, really enjoy while we're traveling.
And so just a quick follow-up to that. So I know for us, sometimes when we're trying to decide on going somewhere or doing a trip, sometimes it can be tough to see like, oh, is this legit? Are we going to like we were trying to do this hiking thing in Monterey, and we have like no idea if we like sent money to the right person or we just ox out someone random who's stealing our money. I think a lot of people probably, especially with kids, have a lot of fear about doing trips and tours. This is going to be right. Like, how do you guys decide on experiences and trips like that and make sure they're going to work for the whole family?
Yeah, it's hard sometimes, right? I mean, it takes a lot of prep. Travel planning is not just like, throw it up on the wall and see what sticks. It's like when we were trying to go to Egypt, right? We spent a month reaching out to companies. And as, I think it's another thing where you just take the first step. And as we didn't really know what we were reaching out about or what we're trying to do there because we didn't really know much about it. But you take the first step, they give you back something, you realize what you want is a little different than that. You're reaching out to a bunch of other places. And as you go through that progress, that process, I should say, then that brings you to the right place. It just kind of like enables you to figure out what works best.
The ones that aren't going to be a good fit, they kind of fall off the radar, and the ones that are really understand your method of travel, how you want to get there, what the experiences you want to have, those are the ones that bubble up to the surface, and that's the company you go with. Even though when we went to Egypt, we couldn't pay.
I was about to say, we know what you're talking about.
They couldn't take payment through PayPal or anything like that, so we didn't pay until we got there.
Just bring like cash.
Yeah, just bring a bunch of thousands of dollars in cash,
and then we had to go through this. Remember, we didn't even pay for like the first week we were there.
Yeah.
We were like on the tour and we still hadn't paid, and they were still trying to figure out how we could pay because we had to we had to wait till we got to this market in Cairo, go down 5 different back alleys up to this random shop that was selling all kinds of trinkets, and that's where we paid for the tour.
So yeah, not always clean cut. Nope.
That's so funny. It's just like, I don't know. This is the stuff that you were saying you used to like be kind of controlling. Totally. I feel like this is the stuff when I started traveling where I'm just like, I'm not doing that. Like we just won't go. And now I'm just like,
it'll work out or we'll find something else.
Yeah, it's Africa.
Yes, Hashtag it's Mexico.
Yeah, we just roll with it. Yeah, we've been having a laugh about that all weekend because we went to go pick up our rental car and just not there.
Yeah. No, we don't. We have your reservation that you reserved a car, but no cars available.
Have a nice day. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, you kind of roll with it. But yeah, it's not always easy.
But certainly, reading a ton of reviews online and making sure there's some stability with the company.
And also trying to communicate to people when you're traveling with kids is like, we can't go full force. We're traveling a bit slow. We're traveling full time. We're traveling slower. And so we don't need to see or do everything. And that's been a big one because a lot of times if we don't always take tours, we don't always use tour companies, but if we are, we have to tell them that this is a way too packed day for kids. We are like, cut us up, do something in the morning. We need a morning activity or an afternoon activity. We don't need both. We need time to rest. We need time to recuperate. Give us 5 days off. I promise we won't be bored, and we just don't need to go. And that's been a hard thing for people to understand. Like, we're constantly like, we got to cut this out. We got to cut this out. They're like, no, you need to do this. This is definitely something you want to do. And I'm like, I want to do everything, but I know that it's not the best for our family.
Yeah, so definitely as a family, making sure that you tailor the experience for how your family operates, because don't just try to fit yourself into the normal travel agenda.
Yeah, that makes me think that that's probably like one of the reasons that more families don't travel, because it's like, I think it's hard. I guess I think back to when I was younger and my family was traveling, and we would usually do like an all-inclusive trip to somewhere like Mexico, or maybe do more of like the traditional kind of like Disneyland, Disney World trip. But on the trips we went to Mexico, it's like we would have a hotel for 2 weeks, and then we would book some activities from like the tour operator. And it was never like dated, like back-to-back activities. It's like, okay, there's like this activity here, then we spend a couple pool days, and then this activity here. And I think my parents hadn't traveled much, which is probably why they didn't take us on these like extravagant trips. But I feel like they were very much like, okay, let's figure out like how this is going to work best as like a 4-unit team.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And usually includes a lot of rest.
Yeah. Yeah, which makes sense.
And so you guys talked about taking it 3 months at a time, 3 months at a time. What does the next 3-month period look like for you guys?
Or 7 months.
Or 7 months, yeah.
We're
Or
open.
12 years, whatever.
Where are you going to be in 20 years? 20. We're talking 20.
That scares me. Don't ask that question.
So we're definitely committed to having the kids be in school here in Mexico. So that's our focus right now. That's all we're really have in front of us. Want to make sure that we're giving them that opportunity to spend a full semester in school here in Mexico. Michelle and
Wow,
I-
a full semester. We're committed.
one semester at a time.
We're committed to education. We're going to get a term done.
But yeah, and then Michelle and I are, balancing our work schedules. So that's what's really in front of us right now, making sure that we're giving the kids that chance to really make these connections here in Mexico and, go through that school term.
You're not going to share what we're planning on doing?
I don't know. Who knows?
Here's the plan, because if I put it out to the universe, it's going to happen, right? So we are thinking that that we will try to do some more travel next year and intertwine that with the kids being in school. So we're hoping to get to maybe the 6th and 7th continent and the kids' 6th and 7th continent, I should say. And so, yeah, stay tuned. More exciting stuff to come.
Awesome. Yeah, we both think it's so cool what you guys are doing. Especially, I think something we've talked about on the show is just how remote work is changing, like the way people can go about living their lives. So we talk obviously a lot about just kind of individually, like how you can do what you want and travel. But I think it increases so many options for a family too, because if you work remotely, you don't need to think necessarily about like, oh, during spring break, I'm going to take my kids out. Like you can take your whole family to Mexico for a semester and do stuff like that because you don't have to sacrifice your career. You don't have to sacrifice your kids' education. In many ways, it's going to be better for both those things, and you get to learn about a new culture at the same time. So just think it's really awesome.
Yeah, and I think, this isn't for everyone. Not everyone would enjoy what we do, our experiences, but for those who want these experiences, you can make it happen. It's just, you might have to rework your life and your schedule and your routine, but certainly it's possible for anybody who has the desire.
Yeah, and I think that's more and more prevalent now that you see so many, now that we've been doing this, we've seen so many families, and we meet other couples like you guys that are doing this type of thing, that are figuring out how to work, make money, and travel, or just do what they want in life, not be so put in a box. And I think the biggest thing, though, is that everybody that we've met has come from all different walks of life, and the one thing that has been consistent about every single person that we've met is they did not come from money. And I think that's a big misconception, is like, oh, you have to have so much money to be able to do this. And the truth is like, we say this all the time, but we spend our money on travel. We don't spend our money on a lot of excessive things. So I think if there's one thing I could say to people, is just like, go do it, right? Like just figure it out and do it, because all of us have just, we're not getting money from parents or trust funds, or we sold a business for $1 billion. We are figuring it out, and that's like pretty much what everybody else could be doing too, if they want to.
Yeah, and something you mentioned before, just the difference between like even trying to send your kid to a private school in the States, like that's insanely expensive so many places. And for us, a lot of people ask about like how we afford to live, and I think it's almost cliche at this point because it's way cheaper to live and do what we do here. It's almost like you're getting more and paying way less. So in many ways, especially with a family too, it would be the same situation.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I had a call with somebody when we were first in Mexico City who was like, oh, well, do you mind if I ask how much money you make per month? Which was a little weird because we'd known each other for like 30 seconds on Zoom, but I was like, okay. And so we're talking, and she's like, oh, I would have assumed that you made like $20,000 a month. And I was like, no, definitely not.
We're not staying at the Ritz.
And I was like, well, actually, part of the reason why we're in Mexico is so we can like build up our entrepreneurial stuff and build up our freelance work and start like live this life that's more affordable, so that we can really focus on making more money without that like high pressure. We need to make all this money. So I think there is this like massive misconception of like how much travel has to cost. And sure, travel can be very expensive.
Yeah.
There's super expensive flights that you can take that are super luxurious. There's plenty of expensive hotels and tours and trips, but it doesn't have to be.
Right.
And I think for, especially like as a couple, we find like we save a ton of money on like our day-to-day things being in Mexico. And I'm sure it's the same as a family.
Yeah.
It's like the average meal in the US is $30 a person.
Yeah,
It's
no.
not the case here.
Right. Yeah. No, absolutely. There's definitely like, we do spend where we really want the experience, and where we really want to do something. We kind of, we'll spend the money on it, but then we really hold back on a lot of things that just are not, that don't matter as much to us. And so we try to balance that in our budget.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us again. Thank you for taking the time to host us this weekend. It's been amazing.
Yeah, when we started this podcast today, I didn't think we were going to be comfortable all sitting in this hammock.
That was one idea, is that we were all going to sit in the hammock, but we are.
That would have been funny. We would have been like on top of each other at this point. I'm curious though, if people want to follow you guys and check out your cute, adorable kids, where can they go to find that?
They can go to Retired Toddlers on Instagram and Facebook, and we also have a YouTube channel, and retiredtoddlers.com.
Yeah, Michelle's put together some amazing videos on YouTube from our experiences in Egypt and Morocco and France, so check those out for sure.
Yeah.
At Retired Toddlers.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
All right. Before you push pause or skip ahead, this is not the end of the episode. We actually had the opportunity to be joined by two more very special guests while we were out visiting the Retired Toddlers family, and it is the Retired Toddlers themselves, Jagger and Henley. We had so much fun hanging out with them over the course of our time visiting, and we are really excited to be able to share a little quick interview with them here on this episode.
Hi guys, we are with the World Wonders, and we're going to do a podcast about questions and all of the world wonders.
Thanks for kicking that off. I thought I was going to do it, but you guys did a better job than me. Can you guys introduce yourselves and say how old you are?
Yes, I am 4 years old, and my name is Jagger. And I am 6 years old, and my name is Henley.
And you guys are the Retired Toddlers, right?
Yes.
And so we just talked to your mom and dad all about what it's like to travel with you guys, but we are curious, what is your favorite thing about Mexico?
My favorite thing about Mexico is where we can run around at our hotel and run on the cobble street roads. And I like how none of the cars really go on the cobble street roads that much, so that we can enjoy the street and walk on it. Yes, 'cause I like the roads and the cobble streets and all of the roads like that. And the flat road, it's better to go on the road with cars.
Yeah.
And what's your favorite Mexican food?
My favorite Mexican food is vegetables.
Vegetables.
My favorite is chile.
Chile.
Chile y vegetales.
Sí. También.
And so you guys have been to a lot of countries all
Yes.
over the world. What's your favorite country in the world?
My favorite country is Cincinnati. Yeah, Ohio.
Ohio?
Ohio and Hawaii?
What?
Yes.
Okay, so those are actually both in the United States, which is really cool. What outside of the United States is your favorite of all the adventures you've been on?
Mexico.
Mexico.
Okay, good choice.
Like we are right now.
Yeah. And you guys have spent a lot of time in Mexico, and you speak really, really good Spanish. Could you sing us a song in Spanish?
Yes.
Which song do you want to sing?
San Solecito. Mariposina está en la cocina, chocolate. No, cociendo chocolate de la bailarina. Hoy de guacamole y yo.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us, guys.
Thank you too.
Thanks for coming on. Do you guys have anything else you want to share with listeners?
One more song.
Okay.
Yes, one more
Okay.
song. Yeah. San Solecito calienta un poquito por hoy, por mañana, por toda la semana. Lunes, martes, miércoles y jueves, viernes, sábado y domingo.
Thanks, guys.
Gracias.
Bye.
Gracias. Bye.
Bye. Adiós. Adiós.
To find more information, relevant links, and photos talked about in this week's episode, check out theworldwanderers.com.
If you have a question, comment, or feedback, send us an email at info@theworldwanderers.com. Join our community on Facebook at The World Wanderers or on Twitter at WorldWanderers1. As always, thanks so much for listening.
Have a great day.
Bye.